show on the.
I'll make sure to watch your language here. We're live on the air.
Well, I still have the ability to edit this. Don't
But
you
you
worry.
won't.
I might not because it's easier.
So what are we're saying now? These are just some segments between us, kind of doing a pulse on the market and looking at different segments of our job. Or
yeah, well, here, give it like a 3, 2, 1 and like actually intro, because you've been good at that. So I can cut the 10 seconds.
Okay. Mindset Mentors in Real Estate. Mindset Mentors Real Estate Podcast.
Welcome. Well, the intro will play before this.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
all right, 3, 2, 1. All right, welcome everybody. Pete and I here are just doing some segments talking about a couple different topical items in real estate. So we figured we would share some things we've been learning from our group and dealing with other agents.
Correct, because today the main topic of focus is going to be getting an offer for your buyer accepted in this wild, wild west of a market that we're currently in.
And if you do that, you will look like you're some sort of miracle healer because it's so difficult in some cases.
It's okay. So spoke with DJ in Durban today, and DJ just turned 42. He's 12 years older. He has the experience. He has the knowledge. They were around in the mortgage business in 2008. And both of them agree that this is the most ridiculous, difficult market that they've seen in their time in the mortgage and real estate industry, which is basically the majority of what they've ever done.
Yeah.
So
we hear from a lot of industry veterans, like Joel the other day at the event. I mean, he's been in it for 30 years in this business, 3 major market cycles.
Right.
And he said, this is absurd.
And my point in saying that is, to anyone that hears this, you're not alone. You're not crazy. It is very difficult right now. And so again, what we want to talk through is just some tips, tricks, things that have helped and worked for Tim and I and our team or organization that helps position your buyer in the best possible light to get their offer accepted. So do you want to take us through some of the first couple things, Tim?
Sure. Yeah. I think a lot of it in the beginning, it's different for every person, whether you're part-time, full-time, how your schedule looks, if you have a family, other requirements in your day. But first and foremost, I guess some people's take on this is a little bit different. Some people want to get the appointment with a buyer, and they won't even confirm they're pre-approved so they can get face-to-face.
Right.
I think the busier you are, you want to make sure they're pre-approved before you're showing them properties. That's a general rule of thumb, but
it's something that I explain as 2 sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
I tell people, like, if you find your dream home, you don't have the pre-approval ready, it does not matter. Unless you're buying cash, you need to have that. And honestly, I've spoken with people that I met at open houses. This happened yesterday. And she's like, yeah, I've been looking with an agent for 6 months. I was like, are you pre-approved? She's like, no, they never told me to do that. I'm like,
whoa.
Well, even if I never speak with you again, here's a couple mortgage lenders.
That's
she connects
crazy.
to Kevin today.
Yeah.
This episode's sponsored by Kevin O'Loughlin.
Kevin.
Mortgage.
Our man.
Connects with Kevin today.
Best in the business.
He is. And I get the email alert. I'm like, well, there you go. And it's not that I'm trying to do anything except serve the customer. Maybe she'll never call me again. I hope she does. But it's number one step in the process for sure. So
yeah, I mean,
different financing options was something I wanted to, know more than I do as far as the VA loan programs.
It still blows my mind that happened. But wow. I think it seems obvious, but maybe it's not. When they're going through that pre-approval process, they might be qualified for more or less than they think they are. Based on their debt to income ratio. So that's obviously a good first step. So that leads us to some of the different financing options. So obviously Pete alluded to it, cash, cash is king, which obviously you get a cash offer, you're able to put one in, which, by the way, for example, not to go too far in a sidebar.
Oh, that's fine.
Talking with another agent, we both submitted an offer on the same property.
Okay.
And in this area of Pittsburgh, it's extremely competitive, not a lot of move up homes. And he put an offer in, $65,000 over ask, no contingencies except for mortgage because they were conventional buyers. He still lost. There were 21 offers on the property.
Dude,
the offer I put in wasn't even close to that. And I still kind of thought maybe there's a chance. So what I want to know is, where is everyone getting all this cash that they're putting in these crazy cash offers?
I had a similar experience working with home buyers, first-time home buyers too, where it was in the 420s and it sold cash in the 460s.
I mean,
and okay, well, so this maybe skipping ahead, but something that I've said to people quite a few times too is I can't tell you what it is worth to you and
Right.
your family
Yep.
to get your children into the school district that you want to be in,
Yep.
to have them in the area that you want to be, to live near your mom, to have a relatively good commute to work.
Mm-hmm.
If you still go to the office in whatever capacity, like, are you going to be losing a little bit up front? Potentially. Are you going to be renting or homeless otherwise? Yeah.
Yep.
So roll the dice, basically.
Yeah.
And if you're buying a nice home in a nice area and you are going to be there for a period of time, it's worth it. It's
Yeah.
worth it for the security of your family.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to weigh the risk.
Yeah. So, and on the flexibility piece of that, maybe some people have the cash available to do that. And they think, like, for me personally, I don't think I'd want to pay all cash.
Right.
Um,
Wow.
the only reason I would maybe is exactly what we're talking about, to win the offer. And then you can always, refi your house,
Right.
down the road, so you can free up some of that cash. I would rather have that cash doing other things for me personally, but that's not everyone's situation.
Yeah. Or, I mean, if you have 400 grand, like, that's amazing. Good for you. But it really comes back to what is the reason that you want to be doing this in the first place? If it's not strong enough, I mean, that's part of it too. I've told
Yeah.
people, like, listen, you might have to rent for another year. I mean,
Mhm.
and so
that ties into expectations up front,
that's what I was just going to
which
say.
is
So
hugely important in this market. Some people, I'd say most consumers now are pretty aware of what's going on in the market,
right.
but it still is very important that agents give them clear and upfront expectations, especially based on the local area they're looking in. That example I gave you, they're well
Right.
aware it's very competitive in that pocket of Pittsburgh, but
Right.
it's my job to set the expectations of, like, how badly do you want to get in here? Like, are you comfortable
How bad do
risking
you
your
want it?
hand money,
Yeah.
and not doing a home sale contingency or waiving inspections? You just need to have those conversations up front. Otherwise, you're going to lose 8, 10 offers and they might lose faith in you.
And that's, so I do Arte Syndicate with Andy Frisella, Ed Milet. And yesterday, one of the ideas is to what you just said, the expectations. And so this is more of just to, like, an agent listening to this, a business and your customer, the relationship is you have to service your customer at a consistent level that meets their expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Because McDonald's and a 5-star restaurant are restaurants. And the difference is, to be an amazing quality, high quality restaurant, you have to meet your customers' expectations at a certain standard always. Otherwise, they won't come back.
Yeah.
And they'll tell you bad, negative things. But if you go to McDonald's, the reason that they are what they are with fast food is because their standard is lower, but it's consistent.
Yeah.
And
it's quick.
anywhere in, exactly. So it meets a different need. So what you want to do then is position yourself as, again, you're an expert, you're a real estate advisor, you're an expert advisor. You have a process to put them through and help them work through to get the desired result. So
yeah, and I think for a lot of people that are new, it might be scary. I mean, I remember when I just first started out, I think it was scary for me to, maybe I was afraid of, like, oh, I'm going to lose these people if I scare them away. Well, I mean, you want to be genuine in your approach, obviously. So maybe that's talk with other people in your office. Do look on YouTube different ways to work with your buyer client. I don't know. I mean, it's hugely important to have those conversations up front. So, okay, I guess, yeah, we can talk through, once you have your buyer pre-approved and it's still in this crazy market right now, what are the steps to make you stand out as a buyer agent? So Pete, what you're going to write an offer, you've been working with these clients for 6 months. What's the first thing you do?
Yeah. So you walk through the house, they like it, we want to do this. So the first, well, we're going off our notes, but the first thing that I actually do is, while I'm standing in the house or before I leave them, whoever did their pre-approval, I will either have the email sent before I physically stand leaving with them, saying, hey, Kevin O'Loughlin with Movement Mortgage, who's sponsoring this episode indirectly.
Kevo.
I will email the client. I will email Kevin's team and say, 123 Main Street for Mr. and Mrs. John Smith homebuyer at $1.5 million. What is the monthly payment for that? Because the reason that's important, especially now over the past 2 months, interest rates have gone up from 3 something to 5 something, and it's going farther.
Very relevant right now.
And so
people get priced out.
Someone buying at 225 a couple months ago, or they kind of got a deal, if you will, and they would be paying more monthly now, obviously higher interest rates. So number one, I'm getting that estimated cost sheet from the reputable lender. Number one. Number two is,
Can I ask you something on that?
yeah,
How do you do with your buyers? So for me, what I know it's case dependent, but sometimes I'll say, okay, this one's at 225. You know, what's the max you're willing to pay? I'm not saying you're going to, but what's
right.
the max you're willing to pay before you say, that's too much. I'm okay to lose it at this price. And then for those cases, I'll have them do a cost sheet at that high amount just to know you're not going to go any higher than this. This is the highest your estimated monthly payment would be.
I don't know why we haven't talked about this before. So
Yeah.
what I do is, if it's 200 and they want to offer, if it's a $200,000 house and it's listed at $200,000, I'll say, please give us a cost sheet at 200 or 210 or 210 to 220. So, or a $5,000 or $10,000 difference. So you can just do the math.
That's a good idea.
You can just do the math for them as an estimated cost sheet, because and then it saves the lender time.
Yeah.
So even if you do it at a $5,000 difference, you can just times 2, times 3.
That's a very good idea.
And so that way you don't have to screw around with extra cost sheets.
Yep.
And it makes it easier for the consumer too. I just kind of thought of this relatively recently.
I'm going to start doing it.
It's a good idea. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, KO, for those cost sheets.
Well, seriously, you need to have someone you can rely on in the team too. I mean, it's not just him.
Right. Yeah. Everybody we work with is very instrumental in our success.
And that's why a lender matters. It's a team effort, truly, to get everything together, because everyone has to be acting quickly when it's time to. So
buyers out there, lenders matter. I can't tell you how many lenders maybe in this market where you might not be able to get a hold of them over the weekend. And that's the difference between you getting an offer accepted or you missing a deadline.
Hey, everybody, when do real estate sales happen?
Is it weekend?
Is it Wednesday at 8 p.m.? Maybe. It's Saturday and Sunday.
Get yourself hooked up with Kay and the movement team.
Yeah. And so with that $10,000 difference, you have your monthly payment. And I say it to people too. We're like, listen, the worst possible thing here is you're not going to know what overpaying is. You have to define for yourself what you're comfortable with at the top end. Is that $1,200 a month? Is it $3 million a month? It doesn't matter. It's, what is your monthly payment? I'm paying $200,000 for this house. I can't quantify what that actually means per month. I need to see what it means per month. $2,200, pick your limit that way. And then the next thing I'm doing is reaching out to the listing agent and something along the lines of, hey, what's the timeline? The question I like is, what other offers have you received? And it's
pretty open. Yeah.
Well, in a psychology way, where it's like, how many offers have you received? How many offers have you received? Have you received any other offers? Is different in the sense that, like, what other offers have you received? It's like, well, we have like one.
Yeah.
Have you received any others? Like, yeah, it's just a little bit different. We're like,
so you're being more open when you ask that, because it kind of puts it on the listing agent to
what questions and how questions. How can we make this work? What do you need from my buyers? And I always say something like, money, obviously more money, like, duh, that's the answer. But what other things, like the timeline for closing, the flexibility? Hey, my buyers are renting. They don't have another home to sell. Like, we're ready to rock and roll. So those, again, I want to make sure that
and I just want to highlight one thing you said in the middle of that. We're getting out of order. We'll get better at this, but so many say buyer's agents have probably heard some consumers say, I just don't want to overpay. And I would say that's a very psychological thing. And maybe that shows you their level of motivation. I mean, I don't want to overpay either, but do you want a home or not? Because very rarely are offers at ask on a competitive property going to win. So the house is worth what someone's willing to pay, not what you think it's worth.
Like art.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. That's it's a good analogy.
And it's true. Like, it's your family.
So if there's people that have been looking for 12 months and they're just tired and they're going to maybe do something stupid, the Fed calls it exuberance. We're in a time of exuberance right now.
I like, it's a nice word.
It's a fun word.
It's true.
But okay. So now back to, so you run you get the cost sheet for your buyer, and then you're calling the listing agent, you're having the conversation. I can say from the other side, being a listing agent, when I have a buyer's agent call me and they're friendly, they're nice, they're inquisitive, but not too pushy.
Mhm.
I remember them.
Dude,
And
it's so important.
I talk to my seller and say, hey, I have worked with this agent, or, they know what they're doing.
Right.
That helps. Conversely, if a buyer agent calls me and is demanding of certain things,
Correct.
I kind of remember that tone a little bit. And
Well, but you have to position yourself in a way. I've experienced it too. So I had the 113 Snowden Drive. We had 46 people through the open house. I got 10 offers on the property. Almost all of the offers that we received were forwarded DocuSigns where I had to sift through a bunch of
yep.
crap,
Mm-hmm.
and no one in their email. It was literally like John Smith agent forwarded you a fucking pile of garbage, and it's just like I'm looking at this.
Hey,
I'm just
language check, pal.
we can mark it as explicit on the podcast.
Okay.
It's true
That's
though.
free reign as
But
far as
that's what
I'm
I'm looking
concerned.
through, and that's how
Yeah.
and that
Right.
is I said that because that's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
And like respectfully, please just say what, like, give me some bullet points, like
Yeah.
offer price, escalation clause, yes, no.
Yep.
Don't make me scroll to page 9 to see if you put an appraisal contingency.
That's that's encompassing like your relationship with the listing agent. It's not about just that initial phone call.
Right.
When you're, I don't want to say chumming up to them, but you're like, you're being buddy
You're
buddy
trying
in
to
a
get
way, because
information.
you're trying to get information, you're trying to make a connection, and then
Like, how can I help your seller?
people want to do business with people they like. So if they like you, you're gonna have an easier time getting your offer accepted if it is competitive. And then to your point, when you send over the offer, you don't know how many offers that listing agents to sift through on a Friday at 8:30 when their kids are screaming, wanting to, not go to bed. So having that brief summary with bullet points of highlights is important. Makes it more organized. Shows the kind of agent you are.
Exactly. Anything you can do to make their life easier.
Yep.
The same way that customer service is the industry we're in. It's real estate, but it's customer service and it's client relationships. So the point that we had next was to just talk through, the goal of removing as many variables upfront as possible. So, with buyers, Tim, what do you say? So like, hey, Tim, I'd like to buy this house. I'm not fully comfortable waiving inspections. Like, what's another way that I can work through this without completely waiving inspections?
Yeah. So, and a lot of people, I'm gonna say a lot, I guess some consumers they just don't know. Like, you need to help them and explain to them, like, okay, yeah, waiving inspections might not always be a great idea. However, I'll show them the seller's disclosure. And if it's a new roof, new HVAC, new water heater, just replace the sewer line 5 years ago, I'll say, hey, look, if you were to ever waive inspections on a property, this would probably be the one. And we can do a home warranty, which is going to cover a lot of your mechanical items. But if they're not comfortable with doing that, which I totally understand, I will throw them a couple options. One will be, doing inspections. So as is with the right to inspect. So you still have the contingency where you can walk away if you don't like what the inspection report says, but it's just showing the seller that you're not going to ask for any kind of repairs.
Right. Because the seller's ultimately fearful of, are you going to blow up this deal and ask for me $16,000 worth of new windows in 2 weeks?
Which just happened to me last week.
Which happened to my friend Ryan and Sarah last summer 2020.
That's fun.
It was not fun.
So we'll say that's option A, is as is with the right to inspect. So, hey, buyers, you can still do the inspection. You can still walk away, but we're not going to ask for anything.
Right.
That's it. And then option B of that is, okay, let's do inspections and then do what we call deductible. So somewhere in the sales agreement, last page, you can say, buyers will cover first $5,000 of repairs that come up in an inspection report.
Right.
That also shows the sellers, like, okay, really, these buyers are just looking out to make sure the sewer line's not collapsed, or, it's a major expense. But if it's something small, they're not going to ask for that. And that kind of puts sellers' minds at ease and makes you stand out a little bit until that other cash guy that came out of left field and waives everything comes in.
I was with buyers that, like, he pulled up in a Porsche. I think that was the guy. He just bumped up in the driveway and skipped the line at the open house. We're like, that guy probably is going to write a check. So you're making sure, with the intention of, you're removing as many variables up front as possible. And the way to do that too, it's setting expectations. I mean, that can be probably the title of this entire episode when I post it, is setting expectations to get your buyer's offer accepted. That's what I'm going to name it. So, with that too, an example that I recently had, so buyers in the Bridgeville area, relatively new construction. This was a deal that I closed in February, I think, March. And we walked through the basement, like relatively new construction. There's big cracks in the basement walls. And they're like, well, what the hell? And I'm like, I don't know. Let's find out. And they didn't really have any details except for Ryan Holmes fixed this under warranty while it was still under a Ryan Home warranty. And so that's all I had. And the idea was, okay, well, they're going to be concerned about this. Instead of just letting the home inspector come and say, yeah, you need to, like, the way they always frame it is have a qualified licensed professional roofer, have a qualified profession licensed contractor come evaluate this further. So in the offer, I wrote, contingent on having a structural engineer evaluation. Just skip that part. Don't wait for the inspector to tell you that you're going to have someone come out and look at it.
Yeah.
And so if you know that there's a problem with the roof, you can do a general inspection, but primarily another way to do it is like, don't do the general inspection, just say contingent on a roofer.
Yeah. If everything else looks good. So you're saying if everything else looks good and the main concern is one aspect of it, is that what you're saying?
If your buyer feels comfortable and they are educated in maybe a contracting profession, or they don't even care, it comes down to what your buyer's comfortable with. I always say do the inspection, but if you're going to do the inspection and you have a specific thing you're worried about, get the specific thing addressed as quickly as possible. Don't wait for the inspector to tell you that you should have someone address it.
Yeah.
You know that you're going to have to. Just skip ahead as far as you can in the process.
That's fair. Now, do you think that would make you less competitive, though, against other offers that aren't asking for things like that?
It was a $350,000 house in a nice area.
And you got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it just comes down to like,
it comes down to the list, like talking to that listing agent. I only have one other offer.
Yeah.
It's not very good. Okay. Well, then you're probably stand a chance.
Well, this was a really convenient scenario too, because the listing agent was selling her own home. And basically it was just like, just tell me what you want. Yeah. Like, if we can do it, we're going to.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. And if we can't, then we're not. So talk through too with appraisals, because you've had, listen, knock on wood, dude, I have been 100% either right on or gotten people like $5,000 in equity for every deal that I've done.
That's pretty great.
I have been lucky and accurate, and I really work hard at it, but you have been very good as well, but you've gotten hit with some appraisal gaps. So talk through what maybe the best way to approach that would be.
Yeah. I've gotten kicked in the face a couple times. Always a good time.
Yeah. I'll toot my own horn.
Sure. No. I mean, I explain it, ahead of time to the buyer and just say, hey, look, if you're going to go this high and say it doesn't get accepted, do you have cash available that you could come up with some sort of an appraisal gap if that were to happen? If it underappraises by 10 grand, do you have 10? In some cases they do, and okay, great, it happens. You can bring that extra cash, or, the seller's willing to come down halfway, meet you in the middle, or, you just walk away because the sellers won't budge at all.
Right.
So in my instances, it was always pretty amicable, just kind of met in the middle. But, I guess it comes to the appraisal contingency. FHA, VA, it's locked into the sales agreement, but, we had a prior video. What about waiving the appraisal contingency? Because you're covered under the mortgage contingency, because they're not going to write a mortgage on a property that underappraises. It's not happening.
Right. Which is like a weird catch-22 that I didn't realize for a while.
Yep.
It makes sense though. Say that one more time, because you said it kind of quick.
Yeah. So, and this is why I like when, our buyers work with the KO mortgage team, because we're comfortable with them, and, we can say, okay, hey, we're covered under the mortgage contingency. So we're telling the buyer, we're not doing an appraisal contingency. It's just one thing to take away to make you more competitive, but you're covered under the mortgage contingency. So a bank is not going to lend on the property if it appraises for less than the contract price.
Right.
So that being said, you would not be qualified for that mortgage. So then you'd get a mortgage denial letter from the lender and you'd get your deposit back.
Correct.
Mic drop.
And people don't know that, where it's like, I mean, honestly, here's a question that I don't necessarily know then. What is the purpose of an appraisal contingency? That, you know what I mean? Like, and
I would have maybe
because I want to make sure we're not saying something wrong.
No, I agree. And
because
everyone listening, double check that. Okay. Yeah. This is just some things that we have seen.
I think that would only really work. Maybe we'll do a little sidebar episode on that, because I agree with you. I've done what you just said. It is accurate. You're not wrong, in my opinion.
If you waive the mortgage contingency,
right,
then and you elect the appraisal contingency, that would make sense. That's why it exists. Maybe.
Right.
Maybe they want to waive the mortgage. They're like, hey, we're fine. We know we're strong buyers. We're not going to do a mortgage contingency.
Right. They know they're going to get it,
but they want to make sure
it appraises.
Right.
Yeah. So that, I think that you just answered it. There you go. It's something where these little, and that's, hashtag who you work with matters, where it's like, listen, we're not perfect, but I'm learning constantly. That's part of the reason we're doing this.
It's a different day every day.
And with that though, too, it's again, it's back to expectations, positioning yourself. One thing that I have experienced that, on another listing, and I've been doing this with buyers too, is again, getting out in front of things. So occupancy requirements has been one that has been, helpful for me, where, hey, this house is probably going to need one or two things. If nothing else, smoke detectors.
Yep.
Saying like, we'll pay for 8,000, 3,000.
It's usually not going to be that much.
Yeah. Some amount of money, where it's, what can I do when your buyer client is asking you, what can I do besides more money?
Right.
What can I give them besides more money? You can give them the security of, when variables come up in the transaction, we've already made a plan for it.
Yep.
And our, an occupancy example, it's like smoke detectors, railings, a couple boards are broken in the deck, things where someone would slip and fall on a stairwell, whatever. And instead of doing like the worst railing ever, another piece of it too is getting that affidavit signed. You can have it. I'm blanking on it.
We're going deep.
Yeah. Well, it's saying, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I will pay $1,000 of occupancy requirements if a problem occurs.
Sure.
Because a problem might not occur. It might be $500.
Yep.
It's just one more way to position yourself. And I can talk through all those crazy details that I started to go into. Thank you for
maybe we'll have, let's do a separate one where we do talk a little bit more specifically on that. But what we're highlighting is things to make you stand out aside from just putting in a higher offer. And essentially what you're doing is you're showing the listing agent and the seller, hey, we're going to make this as smooth as possible for you. We're going to make it so easy for you to say yes. It wouldn't make sense for you not to. So the first one, we can go back to number 3, Pete. But so the first one we said was the appraisal gap. If you have any extra funds, if it does underappraise. The second is paying for occupancy requirements. The third one is one thing I've done a couple of times, and one thing I actually just saw on one of my listings, which, I honestly sometimes forget you can even do it. It's pretty simple, is have your buyers pay for the seller's portion of transfer taxes.
Right.
So, if it's the city of Pittsburgh, is 5% total.
They raised that,
which is nuts.
It's a lot. It's higher than everywhere else.
So normally, obviously, it's split between the buyer and seller. But if you take on the seller's portion, you're just increasing their net profit at the end of the day. So that's number 3. That's helpful. We talked a little bit to the inspections in terms of doing informational purposes only, waiving them, or doing that deductible.
Exactly.
Talked about.
It's something where, again, your buyers will pay for anything that'll come up.
Yep.
Because the ultimate fear is, if I accept this offer, are you going to back away?
Right. And
you can make security, the feeling of security, happen by creating a plan for potential variables in advance.
Yep.
That's the shortest way I can think to say it.
And it comes back to those expectations too, by the way, because if you have a buyer who's not financially very strong and they're doing a VA or FHA loan, if they don't have the funds to do it, you can't do this stuff. And the unfortunate truth now is like, you just might lose out on,
which sucks, but
which is rough, but you might just have to look at a lower price point. If you're pre-approved at the 175, don't show anything above 155. I don't know. I mean,
and that's back to setting expectations too. Right. Like new buyer clients where they're like, yeah, we really want somewhere with hardwood floors. I'm like, you're gonna really find out quick. It's like, floors don't matter as long as there's something that isn't dirt. We're good. Like there's nothing for sale.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, hardwood floors that need refinished is not a criteria. We need bedrooms, we need bathrooms, we need school districts. Those are your,
Well, and here's what's really tough without going too far on a sidebar. Some people are like, I just want to wait for it to cool down. Well, the rate's going to keep going up,
That's
and the value of real estate is going to keep going up. So you can get into it now, start building your equity now,
right.
and kind of bite the bullet as much as it is as shitty as it is to say. If there's cosmetic things with your house that maybe you don't like when you first buy it, do that, and you're going to improve your equity anyway. So get in the door now as opposed to waiting, because it's not going to cool down, and it's just going to be harder for younger people to get into properties now. That's just my opinion.
I agree with you.
You know,
I mean, and it's something where,
granted, I'm in real estate, so
well, you're a licensed real estate professional.
Right.
Your opinion is valid and it matters. But the question then too is like, okay, well, what would you say to somebody? Because again, people talk about, this is not on our list, but it's more of like you're just making me think.
Yeah.
When you're getting a new client and, are you telling them, if you talk to somebody, you have to be very eloquent and careful with what you're saying, where they're like, we want to buy 200,000, we're approved up to 225.
Mhm.
And you're thinking in your head, okay, you're going to be competing against people that's like a prime time cash buyer.
Yeah.
You're going to be like, what's maybe a way to start the expectation setting is the way to think.
Yeah.
through
I
it.
mean, and that's a good question. I think it comes down to that first meeting or a couple of meetings where, it's not the first, hi, I'm Tim. Nice to meet you. By the way, it's really hard to win an offer right now. It's going to suck. Like, I can't find a better way to get people to be like, okay, Tim, take her easy. No, like build a rapport, get, trust each other, like each other.
Right.
And then just say, hey, look, I'm here for you. We're going to have maybe a difficult time because the price range we're at is very competitive. There's a lot of cash buyers currently in this price point. So I just want you to know, and I don't want you to hate me in 3 months if we're still looking,
right,
because of how difficult it is. So I'm going to do everything I can. I just want to make sure you fully understand what we're going through currently. Something like that.
Yeah.
And they're going to appreciate you for being honest and upfront, as opposed to just like, oh, that's great. Good.
Like, we're going to have the best time.
Let's look at houses. Like, no,
it's like, no, we're going to war.
They're going to appreciate your candor with them. So
yeah, well, it's like, and you spend a lot of time with people,
yeah,
and you get to know them very well. And that's a interesting piece of the job.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you call them on the phone and then
Yep.
by the end of it, you're hanging out.
Yep.
And it's, a good thing.
It is funny how much time you spend with people. And I mean, it's the biggest purchase of a lot of people's lives. So it's nothing to take lightly. We joke, but you got to take it seriously, obviously. So, all right, we'll get back on track. I think maybe we can end with this one.
Yeah,
so
I was going to say, you talk through,
Sure.
Hunting for off-market deals is an option for your buyers. Something you do a lot of is for sale by owner, FSBO calling.
Yep.
Expired listings. So talk through that, just how that would work.
Yeah. So when I'm having these conversations with buyers, they tell me the areas they're interested in. I'll say, hey, look, here's one thing I do. I do call a lot of prior, properties that were for sale, listed on the MLS. They didn't sell for whatever reason. They're called expired listings. I call a lot of them throughout the week. What I can do is I can call in the specific areas you're looking for and see if somebody would be willing to sell their property. And that way you're going direct to the seller. It's not on the open market. You have less competition. You just call it an off-market deal. I've done 2 of them within the last several months, I think, where it has to work out perfectly. Like, the seller has to be like, okay, yeah, that's great. We'll make it happen.
Right.
So that's one way. You just sift through old expired listings in the MLS, reach out directly to the seller. Several softwares to look up their information.
Right.
Shh, don't tell them how you got their info.
Where'd you get my number?
Google.
That's the answer. Never forget that.
For you expired callers, where'd you get my number? Google. Good. Okay, so the other one for sale by owners, most agents, myself included, I'm guilty of this. You get busy, you get a lot of buyers. You're like, okay, great. I'll set you up on an MLS search.
Right.
Hey, that's fine and all. But not a lot of agents are looking at for sale by owner listings on Trulia, Zillow, whatever. I call them to try and list the property. But if that doesn't work out, or if I know I have a specific buyer that's looking in that area, I'll tell the seller. Might hurt my chances of listing the property if I tell them I have a buyer and then the buyer's no longer interested. But usually the conversation we'll have is they'll say, I may have somebody interested. I'm not promising anything. If that's the case, we can reach back out and set up a showing. However, if that doesn't work out, and then you kind of progress it from there, whatever. Right. We don't need to go in depth on that.
Well, it's something that, in summary, there's a whole bunch of ways. And everything that we just talked through for the past 30 something minutes is a phone call or 2 that you need to have with your buyers.
Yep.
And not every single thing that we just said is going to be relevant for everybody, but a lot of it's going to be relevant for pretty much everybody. And if you're not approaching, again, I can't think of a better way to summarize it, where like the deal that I just got under contract, I'm the listing agent, 10 offers. I think one or two people called me.
Mhm.
I think one or two people gave me any bullet points because I'm calling for highest and best. It's an estate. I'm presenting the offers on Tuesday. Monday evening, it's 7 o'clock. I'm eating probably a sandwich, and I'm filtering
Go
through
figure.
all these emails. I'm trying to find. I'm like, oh, good, they didn't sign page 3 of this. Like,
Yeah.
be precise as a buyer's agent with your documents. Know for a fact that the seller's agent is a mom or a dad or a whatever, and they're trying to have an evening. Like, don't make it take more than an hour for them to get 10 offers together,
Yeah.
and make your stuff organized, make your stuff concise. Uh, Position yourself in a way that you're trying to help, because ultimately at the end of the day, the seller and the buyer have the same goal.
Mhm.
It's buying at a good price, selling at a good price. They both want the same thing, and it's our job to make that happen.
Yeah. And I think we can I'll shut up, but I
Well,
think in real estate, at
it's
least in
closing thoughts.
yeah, in my experience, almost 2 years, whoa, um, you can save yourself a lot of pain by just understanding the fact that you cannot control other people. No
Exactly.
matter what, like, if you think they're gonna lose an offer and they're not comfortable waiving inspections, it's your job to write that offer. Even if, you think it's not gonna like, you have it's your job, and don't lose sleep over the fact that so and so did something that I thought was dumb when submitting an offer, or maybe my
Right.
seller picked an offer that I wouldn't have picked. Well, it doesn't matter because it's not your house.
Exactly.
You're the facilitator here. So I think it was John Geisler. If he listens to this, shout out to him. He put my mind at ease during a transaction where he's like, "Hey, man,
Yeah.
it's just real estate. Like, we can't control. You can't control your seller. I can't control my buyer. If I was him, I wouldn't have done what he just did. But hey, we're here."
And that's okay.
And that
So
was, I mean, that's great. Thank you, John.
you told me about him. He's a nice guy.
Yeah.
All right. Hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully you got something of value out of it. The camera's up there. Maybe we should move that next time so we're looking at it more. But
Yeah.
again, appreciate you listening in, and join us next time.
Godspeed out there. Stay frosty.